It was late afternoon in a quiet Arizona town, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. A black SUV pulled up outside a small roadside diner, drawing a few curious looks. Inside that SUV sat Steven Seagal, dressed casually in a black jacket, tinted glasses, and his usual calm expression. He had stopped for a quick meal after a meeting with local law enforcement officials. What he didn't know was that this stop would soon turn into a scene straight out of one of his own movies. As Seagal stepped out of the vehicle, two local police officers sitting nearby took notice. To them, he looked suspicious. Tall, serious-looking, wearing all black, and driving a car with out-of-state plates. Officer Grant nudged his partner, whispering, "You see that guy? Looks like someone we had a warrant for last month." His partner, Officer Hayes, squinted. "Yeah, let's check him out." They got up, adjusted their belts, and approached him. Seagal had just reached the diner door when he heard, "Hey, sir, hold it right there." Turning calmly, Seagal looked at the officers. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Grant stepped forward, voice sharp. "We got reports of a vehicle matching yours involved in a recent incident. Mind showing us your ID?" Seagal raised an eyebrow. "Incident? I think you might be mistaken." But the officers were already tense. Hayes said sternly, "Just cooperate, sir. Don't make this harder." A few people nearby turned their heads, recognizing the growing tension. Seagal stayed composed. He'd been in situations far worse than this on and off screen. "Officers," he said evenly, "I'm just here to grab some lunch. You're welcome to call your supervisor." But Grant wasn't listening. "Step away from the door. Hands where I can see them." The diner went silent. A waitress peeked through the window, whispering, "Wait, is that Steven Seagal?" Grant ignored her. "Sir, I'm asking one last time. ID. Now." Seagal exhaled slowly, his voice calm but firm. "You might want to think twice before you continue down this road." But what these officers didn't know was that the man they were trying to arrest was about to become their new boss. Officer Grant took a firm step forward, resting his hand on his holster as if preparing for trouble. "You're being uncooperative," he barked. Seagal didn't flinch. His tone was steady, low and controlled, the kind of voice that demanded respect without needing to raise it. "Officer," he said, "I've been nothing but calm with you. I don't appreciate being treated like a criminal for walking into a diner." But Grant wasn't listening. He motioned to his partner. "Hayes, check the plate number." Hayes circled the SUV, mumbling, "Out of state, blacked out windows. Fits the description." He glanced toward the diner, where curious onlookers were already starting to gather near the windows, whispering. Seagal folded his arms, trying to keep things from spiraling. He'd dealt with egos before, but this was different. These weren't actors, and this wasn't a movie set. Grant's voice hardened. "Sir, until we confirm your identity, you're not going anywhere. Step back from the door." Seagal gave a patient smile. "You can check my ID, but I'd suggest you call your captain first." That line only irritated Grant further. "Oh, you think you're special? You think we won't take you in if you're lying?" The crowd outside was growing, people pulling out their phones, recording every second. Some recognized him immediately, others didn't. A man shouted, "Hey, that's Steven Seagal." Another replied, "No way, that's just someone who looks like him." Seagal stayed silent. He wasn't looking for fame or attention. He just wanted respect. Grant approached closer, his shadow stretching across the diner steps. "If you don't comply, I'll have to detain you for obstruction." Seagal raised his hand slightly, not out of fear, but to keep the peace. "I'm cooperating," he said evenly. "You're just not listening." Inside the diner, the waitress whispered to the cook, "He's so calm." Anyone else would have snapped by now. Hayes returned with a small tablet, frowning. "Grant, I ran the plates. It's registered under a studio name in Los Angeles." Grant smirked. "Fake ID, fake car registration. Yeah, I've seen this trick before." Seagal tilted his head slightly, a faint glimmer of disappointment crossing his face. "You really think I'd fake my ID? You have no idea who you're talking to." Grant snapped back, "And I don't care. Around here, no one's above the law." The comment hit Seagal like a challenge, not to fight but to teach. He took a slow step forward, eyes locked on Grant's. His voice dropped lower, calmer. "Neither am I. But the law starts with respect." Grant frowned, clearly unsure how to respond. The crowd murmured louder now. One older man near the sidewalk said, "I've seen his movies for years." "That's definitely him." Hayes looked uncertain. Grant, maybe we should... Grant cut him off. No, I said we're handling this, Seagal sighed. His patience was legendary, but it was running thin. He reached for his wallet, pulled out his ID, and handed it over. Here, maybe this will help you think clearer. Grant snatched the ID, scanned it, and then scoffed. Steven Seagal? Yeah, right. You expect me to believe that? Seagal didn't even blink. Believe what you want, but you'll find out soon enough. The diner door creaked open as the manager stepped out nervously. Officers, please. He's a regular guest here. That is Steven Seagal. Grant shot him a glare. Sir, stay out of this. The tension was suffocating. Even the air seemed to still. Seagal stood motionless, his posture calm, his hands folded loosely in front of him. His silence was louder than any argument. Then finally Hayes spoke again, uncertainty creeping into his tone. Grant, maybe we should just double-check with HQ if he's telling the truth. Grant rolled his eyes. Fine, call it in. But I'm not apologizing to some Hollywood wannabe. While Hayes stepped aside to radio dispatch, Seagal turned to the crowd. His voice carried quietly but clearly. You know, sometimes the hardest thing isn't fighting. It's staying calm when you're disrespected. The crowd murmured in agreement. One woman whispered to her friend, He's handling this better than anyone I know. Seagal gave a faint nod, then looked back at Grant. I've spent my life teaching people discipline. Maybe it's time you learn some too. Grant sneered. We'll see about that. Have you ever been wrongly accused or treated unfairly by someone in authority? Share your story in the comments. I read every one of them. And while you're here, tell me which country and city you're watching this from. I love seeing where my audience is tuning in from around the world. Hayes hung up the radio, turning pale. Grant, dispatch just confirmed something. Grant frowned. What? Hayes hesitated. They said, we're supposed to expect a special guest from headquarters today. Someone coming to meet the chief. Grant blinked, confused. And? Hayes looked at Seagal, his voice dropping. That guest is him. Grant turned toward Seagal slowly, the weight of his mistake beginning to sink in. But Seagal just gave a faint smile. Told you to call your captain. The tension in the air shifted. The officers had no idea that the man they had just tried to arrest wasn't just a visitor. He was about to become their new boss. The silence between them was heavy. The air crackled with tension as Officer Grant's pride refused to let him back down. Even after Hayes' warning, Grant muttered, I don't care who he is. Nobody gives me orders. He stepped forward again, squaring up to Steven Seagal. All right, tough guy, turn around. Hands behind your back. You're coming with us until we sort this out. Seagal looked at him calmly, not a hint of fear, anger, or even irritation. His expression was unreadable, his eyes steady and focused. You really want to do this? He asked quietly. Grant's jaw tightened. You heard me. Turn around, Hayes hesitated. Grant, maybe we should wait. Grant snapped, no. I said now. The bystanders gasped as Grant reached for his cuffs, grabbing Seagal's arm roughly. But before anyone could even process what happened next, Seagal moved. Smooth, effortless, like water. In one fluid motion, he pivoted, gently deflecting Grant's hand while twisting his wrist just enough to make him release the cuffs. It wasn't violent. It was pure control, calm, professional, surgical. Grant stumbled back, his face a mix of shock and confusion. The crowd erupted. Phones were up, recording every second. Someone shouted, Whoa! Did you see that? He didn't even try. Seagal didn't advance. He simply stood there, hands at his sides, calm as ever. Officer, he said evenly, I suggest you slow down before someone gets hurt. And I don't mean me. Grant's face turned red with embarrassment. You just assaulted an officer. Seagal's voice was quiet but commanding. No, I prevented one from making a mistake. Hayes stepped between them now, panic setting in. Grant, stop. Don't make it worse. The dispatch already confirmed his identity. But Grant was past the point of reason. His pride wouldn't let him back down in front of the crowd. I don't care who he is. Nobody manhandles me. He lunged again, but Seagal moved faster than the eye could follow. He sidestepped, lightly redirecting Grant's motion, guiding him off balance until the officer found himself face down on the diner's wooden porch, his own momentum working against him. Seagal didn't even break a sweat. He placed one steady hand on Grant's shoulder, not to hurt him, just to keep him from falling harder. Control, Seagal murmured. That's what separates a professional from a fool. The crowd clapped and whistled. Someone yelled, That's Steven Seagal for you. Even Hayes couldn't hide his shock. Grant, he didn't even hit you, he said under his breath. He just stopped you. Grant pushed himself up, face red, ego bruised. You think this is funny? He shouted at the crowd. Turn those cameras off. No one did. Seagal took a small step back, giving him space. I didn't come here to fight, he said softly. I came here to work with law enforcement. But respect, that has to go both ways. Grant glared, still trembling with anger. But deep down, even he knew he was in the wrong. Hayes lowered his head, realizing how bad this looked. Two cops trying to arrest a man who was clearly calm, composed and trained beyond their understanding. The tension began to melt, replaced by awkward silence. Then Seagal said something that hit everyone standing there. Every badge should remind you of your duty, not your power. Grant froze. The words echoed in his mind. The crowd went quiet again, soaking it in. Inside the diner, the waitress whispered, He's teaching them a lesson right here. Hayes looked at Seagal, almost embarrassed. Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Our chief should be here any minute. Seagal gave a slight nod. Good. Maybe he can explain what's really going on. If you were in Steven's place, what would you do? Would you reveal your identity right away? Or let them learn the hard way like he did? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one. Grant finally stood up, brushing dirt off his uniform, still avoiding eye contact. You think you can embarrass me like this and just walk away? Seagal glanced at him. No anger, no smirk, just that same calm authority. Son, he said, his voice deep and steady, if this is how you treat the people you serve, then maybe it's time someone else teaches you what that badge really means. The flashing red and blue lights painted the diner's walls as Chief Daniels stepped out of the cruiser. A tall man in his late 50s, his reputation for fairness was known across the county. He scanned the crowd, confused to see his two officers surrounded by civilians, and Steven Seagal standing calmly in the middle. All right, Daniels said sharply. What's going on here? Officer Hayes immediately pointed at Grant. Chief, there's been a misunderstanding. We thought this man was... Seagal turned slightly, meeting the chief's gaze. Daniels froze mid-step. His stern expression softened instantly. Oh my God, he whispered under his breath. Steven Seagal? Grant blinked in disbelief. Wait, what? The chief strode forward, extending his hand. Mr. Seagal, sir. I apologize for whatever this mess is. My men weren't aware. Seagal nodded respectfully. Chief Daniels. Good to see you again. The crowd gasped. Whispers spread like wildfire. Did he say again? They know each other? What's going on? Grant looked around, his confidence evaporating. Wait a second. You know him? Daniels turned toward his officer, disappointment written all over his face. Grant, you just tried to detain a man who's about to start working with us. Grant frowned. Working with us? What are you talking about? The chief sighed. Steven Seagal has been officially appointed as a reserve deputy chief for our department. He's here on assignment to train our officers in advanced defensive tactics and community outreach. The crowd erupted. Phones came out faster than ever. No way, someone shouted. You tried to arrest your own boss. Grant's face turned pale. Hayes stepped back, shaking his head. Oh no, we're done. Seagal, still calm, gave a small half-smile. No one's done, he said quietly. But there's a lot to learn. Daniels looked at Seagal with genuine respect. I'm so sorry this happened. If I'd known you'd be in town early. Seagal waved a hand lightly. No harm done. Misunderstandings happen. What matters is how we handle them. Grant's pride was shattered. He took off his sunglasses, eyes darting around the silent crowd. Sir, I didn't know. I thought, Seagal interrupted softly. You thought I was trouble because of how I looked. The words hit harder than a punch. Grant's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The chief shook his head. Grant, you've let your ego get ahead of your badge again. You just embarrassed this department in front of half the town. Grant lowered his head, speechless. Meanwhile, people began shouting things from the sidelines. That's karma right there. He told you to check your attitude. Respect goes both ways, officer. But Seagal raised a hand, silencing the noise. No one here needs to shame anyone, he said firmly. We all make mistakes. What defines us is how we grow from them. The crowd quieted. Even Grant looked up, surprised by the humility in Seagal's tone. Daniels turned to his men. Both of you, stand down. I'll handle the paperwork. And starting tomorrow, you'll be attending every one of Mr. Seagal's training sessions. Grant nodded reluctantly. Yes, sir. As the tension eased, Seagal and the chief stepped aside for a private word. The chief sighed, rubbing his temples. You sure you still want to do this after that? Seagal smiled faintly. Chief, I've worked in worse places. This isn't about me. It's about fixing what's broken, one badge at a time. The chief nodded. You're a better man than most, Steven. Thank you. Seagal glanced toward the two embarrassed officers. We all start somewhere. They'll learn. As the chief walked off to manage the scene, a small group of people approached Seagal for photos. He smiled politely, shook hands, even took pictures with kids. Despite the chaos that had just unfolded, his composure never wavered. A man from the crowd spoke up. Sir, I just want to say, you handled that like a real leader. Seagal looked him in the eye. A leader's job isn't to prove he's right. It's to show others the right way. The diner owner, still in shock, brought out a cup of coffee. On the house, Mr. Seagal, I think you've earned it. Seagal chuckled softly. Appreciate that, brother. The moment was calm again, but the entire town would be buzzing for weeks about what they'd just seen. Two officers trying to arrest the very man who had been sent to lead them. But this story wasn't over yet. Because the next morning, Steven Seagal walked into the police station and made an announcement that left every officer speechless. Grant didn't respond. He didn't need to. The power dynamic had completely shifted. The crowd knew it. Hayes knew it. Even Grant knew it. Moments later, the sound of a police cruiser echoed down the street. The chief's car pulled up, lights flashing. The murmurs grew louder as people whispered, "The chief's here. Now we'll see what happens." Grant straightened up, trying to compose himself. But deep inside, he had no idea that the man he'd just tried to arrest wasn't just another civilian. He was the department's newest superior. Seagal turned toward the approaching vehicle and murmured under his breath, "Finally." The next morning, the atmosphere inside the county police station was tense. Whispers echoed through the halls as word spread fast. "He's here." Every officer, from rookies to veterans, knew what had happened at the diner. Videos had already gone viral overnight. Clips of Steven Seagal effortlessly disarming an officer without aggression were all over social media. Millions were praising his calm authority. Grant sat silently at his desk, staring at his reflection in the polished metal of his badge. Shame burned inside him. Every notification on his phone brought a new headline. Local cop tries to arrest Steven Seagal, gets humbled instead. The chief walked into the briefing room, voice firm. "All right, everyone. Phones away. Mr. Seagal is here." The chatter died instantly as the door opened. Steven Seagal stepped in, wearing his signature black jacket and tinted glasses, his presence commanding quiet respect. He walked to the front of the room and stood there for a moment, saying nothing. The silence was powerful. Every officer sat upright. Finally, Seagal spoke, his voice low and steady. "I didn't come here to embarrass anyone," he began. "I came here because this badge means something. Or at least it's supposed to." He held up a police badge, the new one the chief had given him. "When you wear this," he continued, "you're not wearing power. You're wearing responsibility." The room was still. Even Grant lifted his head slightly. Seagal paced slowly, making eye contact with the younger officers first. "Some of you joined this force because you wanted to make a difference. Some because you wanted respect, and some because you thought the badge would give you control." He stopped, looking directly at Grant. "But control doesn't come from force. It comes from discipline, from knowing when not to use your power." Grant swallowed hard. Every word hit him like a hammer, but Seagal's tone wasn't cruel, and it was teaching. He turned back to the group. "Yesterday was a reminder. We don't judge people by what they look like, where they're from, or what car they drive. Because the second you do that, you stop being an officer of the law and you start being an officer of your ego." The chief nodded silently from the back, impressed. Seagal continued, his words gaining quiet intensity. "When I started in law enforcement years ago, I learned something from an old Japanese sensei. He told me, a man who cannot control himself has no right to control others. That applies here too. If your emotions are your master, then you're not ready for this badge." Several officers exchanged thoughtful looks. The room wasn't just listening, they were absorbing. Grant raised a hand hesitantly. "Sir, I just want to say I was wrong." I judged you before I even knew who you were. I disrespected everything this uniform stands for." Seagal nodded once, acknowledging that as the first step toward growth. Grant continued, voice trembling slightly. "If you'll let me, I want to learn. I want to earn this badge the right way." Seagal looked at him for a moment, then extended his hand. "Then we start fresh and as teammates." Grant shook it firmly. The room broke into quiet applause. The chief smiled from the back. "That's what leadership looks like." Seagal turned back to the crowd. "From today I'll be training every one of you, not just in tactics, but in mindset. Because the fight we face every day isn't always out there on the streets. It's right here." He tapped his chest. "Inside." His words carried a deep stillness. Even the most hardened officers felt the weight of it. Then, with a faint smile, he added, "And if anyone thinks I'm too old to keep up, feel free to step on the mat with me after briefing." Laughter filled the room, breaking the tension. The respect was mutual now. Before leaving, Seagal turned back one last time. "Remember, justice without compassion is just another form of violence. Treat people like human beings first. The badge comes second." The officers rose to their feet in a spontaneous gesture of respect. The chief clapped him on the shoulder. "You've done more in one morning than most could in a year," he said quietly. As Seagal walked toward his new office, cameras from local news stations were already outside. Reporters were asking questions, flashing lights through the windows. But Seagal didn't care about fame. He never did. He just wanted one thing: to restore dignity to the uniform and remind people what true strength looks like. But just when things seemed to calm down, a surprising visit from the state governor changed everything, and proved that Steven's quiet lesson had reached much farther than anyone expected. 2 days after the diner incident, the small Arizona police station was buzzing again, but this time with excitement rather than tension. News vans lined the street, reporters huddled outside, and drone cameras hovered overhead. Inside, Chief Daniels looked both proud and nervous. "He's on his way," he told his staff, straightening his tie. Officer Hayes whispered, "Who's coming?" The chief gave a short, almost disbelieving laugh. "The governor." Every head turned. Moments later, a convoy of black SUVs pulled up outside. Out stepped Governor Mitchell, a tall, sharp-looking man known for being tough on law enforcement reform. He was followed by several aides and security officers. The chief hurried forward, greeting him at the entrance. "Governor Mitchell, welcome." "We weren't expecting—" "I know," the governor interrupted, scanning the hallway. "But after what happened here, I had to come myself." The moment he stepped into the training room, he saw Steven Seagal surrounded by officers, running them through a slow, deliberate self-defense drill. The entire class stopped as soon as Seagal looked up. "Governor," Seagal said calmly, removing his gloves. "Didn't expect to see you here." The governor smiled faintly. "Neither did I, but apparently the internet left me no choice." Laughter rippled softly through the room. He gestured toward Seagal. "You've managed to do something that our entire Department of Public Safety has been trying to do for years. Remind officers what respect and restraint look like." Grant, standing in the back, lowered his eyes, humbled again. The governor continued, "That video of you handling the arrest, it's without force, without anger, has been viewed over 60 million times in just 48 hours. People are calling it the calm of justice." Seagal raised an eyebrow. "The calm of justice?" He repeated, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Yes," the governor said seriously, "and I'll be honest, it's exactly what this country needs right now." He turned toward the gathered officers. "This man showed the world that strength doesn't come from shouting or drawing your weapon. It comes from discipline, humility, and respect. That's what every officer in this state should represent." Applause filled the room. Even those who had doubted Seagal now looked at him with admiration. The governor looked back at him. "Mr. Seagal, I'd like to extend an invitation. We're launching a statewide integrity initiative, training programs focused on leadership, calm response, and respect in the line of duty. I want you to lead it." The room went silent. Seagal crossed his arms. "You want me to train the whole state?" The governor nodded. "Exactly. What you did here shouldn't stay in one small town. It should set an example everywhere." Chief Daniels smiled proudly. "Looks like your first week just turned into a movement." Seagal chuckled softly. "Guess I don't get to retire after all." The governor stepped closer. You've already done more for public trust in law enforcement than a dozen speeches could. That video, that moment, reminded people that there are still officers who care. Seagal nodded. Then let's make sure it stays that way. I'll do it. But only if we focus on one thing, respect above rank. Every man and woman wearing this badge should understand that first. The governor extended his hand. You've got it. They shook hands firmly, cameras flashing from the hallway. The crowd outside cheered as word spread. Steven Seagal appointed to lead statewide police training. But Seagal didn't bask in the attention. He turned back to his officers, motioning for quiet. This isn't about fame, he said. It's about fixing what's broken, one department at a time. The badge is heavy, and it should be. If it ever feels light, you're not wearing it right. Grant spoke up, voice strong and sincere. Sir, I'll be honored to learn under you, and I'll make sure every rookie understands that lesson. Seagal gave him a short nod. That's all I ask, the governor smiled. Looks like we've got the right man for the job. If you were in Steven's shoes, offered the chance to lead a major reform, would you take it? Or would you walk away knowing the system might resist change? Comment your thoughts below. I'm curious where you stand. As the press conference wrapped up, the crowd outside chanted Seagal's name. Cameras flashed, microphones were thrust forward, and questions poured in. But Seagal, ever calm, simply put on his sunglasses and said, "Actions speak louder than interviews." Then he walked past the cameras and into the sunlight, heading straight for his car. Chief Daniel shook his head, smiling. That man's the real deal, Hayes grinned. Yeah, and to think Grant tried to cuff him. The officers laughed, tension replaced by pride. For once, their small-town department had become a symbol of integrity, all because one man refused to react with anger when disrespected. That night, as Seagal watched the sunset from his porch, his phone buzzed with a message from the governor. You started something bigger than any of us expected. Thank you for reminding people what honor looks like. Seagal put the phone down, the faintest smile on his face. Honor's not a word, he murmured. It's a way of life. But even after the fame and headlines faded, Steven Seagal's quiet lesson lived on, in ways no one could have imagined. Weeks passed since that unforgettable day at the diner, the day two officers tried to arrest Steven Seagal, only to discover he was their new boss. What began as a misunderstanding had turned into a nationwide movement. The video of the incident had crossed 100 million views, shared by people around the world. News anchors called it the lesson of calm power. Comment sections overflowed with praise, admiration, and reflection. Teachers played the clip in classrooms. Police academies used it during ethics training. Even international media picked it up, calling Seagal's response a masterclass in discipline. But for Seagal, none of that mattered. He wasn't chasing fame or validation. He was focused on one thing: making sure the next generation of officers understood what that moment really meant. Every morning, he showed up at the training facility before sunrise. No cameras, no press, just him and the recruits. He'd start each session the same way. Respect is earned through action, not demanded through authority. He'd demonstrate control techniques that required precision, not power. Calm energy, not aggression. Violence, he'd say, isn't strength. Control is. Grant, once the arrogant officer who had tried to cuff him, was now his most dedicated student. Under Seagal's mentorship, he'd completely transformed. He apologized publicly, not because he was forced to, but because he wanted to. At one of the sessions, a young recruit asked Seagal, "Sir, how do you stay calm when people disrespect you?" Seagal smiled faintly. "Because I know who I am," he said. "When you know your purpose, no one's words can shake you." That line, "Know who you are," would later become the slogan for the state's new police training program. Weeks later, during a ceremony in the state capitol, Governor Mitchell presented Seagal with a special award for outstanding contribution to law enforcement ethics. The audience gave him a standing ovation, but Seagal didn't bask in the applause. Instead, he used the moment to send one final message. Walking up to the podium, he looked out across the crowd. Officers, politicians, civilians, reporters. Then he said quietly, "I'm not here to be celebrated. I'm here to remind everyone of something simple. Respect is the root of peace. If you want to change the world, start by changing how you treat the person standing right in front of you." The room fell completely silent. No music, no movement, just his words hanging in the air. He continued, "Power without compassion is just another form of weakness, and justice without humility is no justice at all." There was a pause, then thunderous applause filled the hall. Grant was among the first to stand, clapping hard, eyes glassy with emotion. The same man who once tried to humiliate Seagal now looked at him with genuine respect. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed, a journalist asked, "Mr. Seagal, what do you hope people take away from your story?" Seagal slipped on his sunglasses, gave a small nod, and said that no one is above respect, and not even those who enforce it. He turned, walked down the marble steps, and disappeared into the afternoon sun, leaving behind a movement that would continue long after him. Months later, the same diner where it all began had a framed photo of Seagal on its wall. Underneath it, a simple quote was engraved: "Real strength doesn't shout. It stands tall in silence." People still visited, taking pictures and sharing the story online. But the best part? The town's police department had changed. Officers greeted citizens with kindness. The tension that once filled those streets had turned into mutual respect. And that, more than any award, headline, or viral clip, was the real victory. If you believe that respect should come before rank, and that no one deserves to be judged by appearance, type "respect" in the comments. Let's spread this message together. And if you want more powerful stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe, because we're just getting started.